Hello, this is MusicTechHelpGuy. Welcome to this Logic Pro 10 video tutorial on mixing vocals with only 4 plugins, and this is the Logic edition. A few weeks ago, or about a month ago, I think, I released a video called Mixing Vocals with Only 4 Plugins, and I used a bunch of Waves plugins and some Lexicon Reverb plugins. If you were to go out and individually buy all of those plugins that I used in that video, you're going to end up with $1,000 bill because the Lexicon reverbs are like $600 for the package. And then I believe each of the individual Waves plugins are somewhere between $100 and $200 each. So you'll end up with a $1,000 bill. So a lot of people are asking, how can I do this in Logic? I don't have Waves. Is there a cheaper way to do this? So in this video, I'm going to show you how to achieve a similar sound, not the same sound, but a similar sound using just Logic's native plugins. All right, so let me play a little of our example here. We've got the whole instrumental backing track up here. We've got some lead vocals for the verse, some artificially produced harmonies for the verse. We have left and right lead vocals for the chorus, and then some artificially produced harmonies for the chorus. Keep in mind, like I said in the last video I did like this, you're normally not going to mix down your whole instrumental into a stem and then mix the vocals into it. I'm just doing this just so everything looks nice and neat on the screen. So, all right, so let's just give this a listen. All right, let's take a listen to a little bit of the chorus here. So yeah, it's pretty dry, pretty lifeless. There's lots of little peaks and crevices that we want to sort of level out. So in the previous video that I did like this, we used the HEQ from Waves for EQ. We used the CLA3A from Waves for compression. We used the doubler from Waves to sort of like a thickening chorus effect. And then we used the Lexicon vintage plate reverb for the vocal reverb. In our video, we're going to use the stock channel EQ. We're going to use the stock compressor using a very specific circuit, which we'll get to that in a second. We're going to use the ensemble plugin for the thickening chorus effect, and then we're going to use just Space Designer for reverb. So the goal here really is to bring out some of these lower areas and bring down some of these higher areas, so it doesn't sound like she's shouting sometimes and then singing softly other times. We want it to be dynamically pretty level. And we also want to brighten up the high and inner voice, brighten up the low end a little bit, cut out unnecessary frequencies as well. So let's start with that. Let's start with the EQ. Let me just solo out her lead vocal here. Let's take a listen to this. By the way, you're going to hear a lot of artifacting because when we recorded this, we did a lot of time manipulation. We did a lot of pitch manipulation. So if you hear some weird artifacts and glitchy sounds in there, that's why that's there.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
All right, so let's start with just the channel EQ right on our channel strip here. I'm going to turn the an analyzer on here so you can see the analysis.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
Yeah, she's a very high singer. She's very much a soprano. Like one of the lower notes is over here. We'll hear it in just a moment, but we really don't need a whole lot of the low end in here. So I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the high pass filter here, roll up the shelf, or not the shelf, the slope here. I'm going to pull the frequency up to about 80 hertz. That's going to scoop out a lot of the low-end rumble that doesn't need to be in there. It also helps reduce plosives and things like that. I'm going to bump up sort of her mid-low range a bit just to give her a little bit more body on some of the low notes. I'm going to pull up her high end a bit, right around 10K, just for like a sibilance boost. I'm going to adjust the Q here so I get more of a wide band boost as opposed to a narrow band boost. And I'm going to pull down her sort of mid-high range, just a touch. Just to get some of the boxiness out of her voice. And one thing I always do with this singer, just because she has some really, really high overtones, is I actually like to turn on the low-pass filter as well. Put it on the highest slope, the steepest slope, and then pull the frequency all the way up. So we're scooping out 20,000 hertz, but we're scooping out some overtones that are a little bit shrieky, that are really barely within, or not even within your normal hearing range, but just to get rid of some of those. So let's see what this sounds like now.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of energy in this little 5K area, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down this just a touch. Whoop, wrong band. I'm going to pull this band down just a touch, just so we grab some of those mid-frequencies.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
There we go. And I also pulled down our low-pass filter here just a touch, so it's actually within the audible range. All right, so that's our EQ. Let's go to compression next. We're just going to use the stock compressor. For vocals, I really like to use the Studio VCA, the Classic VCA, the Vintage VCA, or the Vintage Opto. I find that the Vintage Opto sounds the most like an LA2A. I mean, it's hard, it's a hard comparison to say, oh, the Vintage Opto in Logic, the stock compressor in a $200 program sounds like an LA2A, which is a $3,500 piece of hardware, but it's the closest to it in terms of the circuit design. But sometimes I find I like the Classic VCA more just because there's less controls. I really like less controls for like leveling amplifier type compression, you know. I like the fact that I don't have to deal with the attack and the release time. I like the fact that it's basically automatic. So I'm actually going to use the Classic VCA for this. I think this sounds a lot like the CLA3A plugin from Waves. So what I'm going to do is just pull the threshold down a bit, pull the ratio up a bit, and we'll go from there. Let's see what this sounds like.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Just keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me.
And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down the ratio here, or not the ratio, the mix here. And what this does is it blends the original input signal, the dry signal, with the compressed signal. Just a touch, just so we can get some of those peaks back. We can hear the diction a little bit better. I really don't want to slam this too much. I'm looking for somewhere between 5 and 10 dB of reduction. I don't believe when we recorded this that we used a compressor on input, so that's why I'm hitting it a little bit harder than I normally would. Let's just see what that sounds like.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Just keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me. One moment I'm alone in this world with you.
Yeah, so this is doing a pretty good job of pulling down those highest peaks in the recording. So let's just see what that sounds like by itself. Or excuse me, with the backing track in there.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Just keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me. One moment I'm alone in this world with you. One moment I'm setting fire to 1,000 dreams, and you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Want you to love me like you never did. Want you to love me like you never quit.
Cool. Yeah, I just pulled up the high end a little bit more, just adjusted the EQ a bit, and adjusted the compression a bit. So let's move on to our backing harmonies. Now, these are artificially produced backing harmonies. I basically took her lead vocal track, put it into Melodyne, tuned it up and then pitch shifted the notes up so that they're in harmony with the lead vocal. They're full of artifacts, and really the point with these is we want to sort of apply the same compression to them, but a very, very different level of EQ, because we want them to sort of be hidden in there. Like my rule with backing harmonies like this, like if they're artificially produced, is that if the listener has to say, oh, those are some really cool artificially generated backing harmonies, well, you're probably not hiding them well enough. I want this just to sort of thicken the vocals at these certain spots, and I really don't want them to be too noticeable. So let me just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over the same EQ and the same compression. But what I'm going to do in the EQ is I'm going to scoop out a lot of the high end, a lot more of the high end. I'm not going to boost the high end quite as much. Let me just listen to it by itself right now, though.
Setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
And then with both vocals in.
You keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
One thing I found when I create artificial harmonies like this with Melodyne is that sometimes there's some phase issues in the upper frequencies, because that's where phase typically is most noticeable. So what I'll do is I'll often scoop out the high end quite a bit in backing vocals like this, because the higher the frequencies are, the more likely they are to interact phase-wise in a bad way. So I'm going to sort of bandpass the backing vocals.
You keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
There you go. I'm also just going to pan these backing vocals off to the right a little bit, just to give them a little bit of space.
You keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me.
All right, so let's listen to that with the music.
After all this time, you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Just keep tearing me apart.
Cool. So let's move on to some time-based effects like we did last time. What we did last time is we went up to options, went up to create new auxiliary channel strip, or you can hit Control N. And this is oh, hang on, there we go. I was picking up my voice in the aux track there. This is going to be our vocal reverb track, Vox Verb track. I'm going to create another one. And this one is going to be our Vox chorus effect. So the first thing we're going to throw on here, let me just solo these out, solo my chorus, is we are going to use a plugin called Ensemble. It's under Modulation Ensemble. This is really the closest thing I can find to the doubler from Waves. It basically, you can split your signal to a number of voices and detune those voices and modulate those voices. So I really like to just go with the rich modulation setting and then play with the number of voices that I want to hear. So let's start with like 5. Let me actually unsolo these. Let's create an input bus for our Vox chorus here. So we'll say bus 1. And we're going to send both of our vocal tracks to bus 1. Pull up the send amount. This is going to control how much signal is coming from these tracks going over to the Vox chorus track. Let's listen to that.
Push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear.
Now, since we're putting a time-based effect like this on an aux track, we want the output mix to be 100%. We want to hear completely wet signal on this channel because we're going to hear the dry signal over here. The only reason why we're not hearing it now is because I unsoloed these 2 tracks. We're just hearing the chorus effect right now.
Of the fire below me. One moment I'm alone in this world with you. One moment I'm setting fire to 1,000 dreams.
So let's listen to that with the vocals in there too.
And you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Want you to love me like you never did. Want you to love me like you never quit.
There we go. I'm going to pull the voices down to 7. You don't want to use too much of it because sometimes it'll start to sound a little bit detuned. All right, next, let's throw some reverb on here. So we're going to make our reverb channel input bus 2. Go to our 2 vocal tracks, create a send going to bus 2. Pull that up a bit. On our Vox Verb track, we are going to create Space Designer under Reverb, Space Designer. I'm a big fan of using plate reverbs for vocals. So I'm going to go to Medium Spaces, Plate Reverbs, and then what I'm going to use is Soft Plate. If you want one that's a little bit less bright, you can use the blue plate. So I'm going to use the soft plate. Since our reverb is on an aux track, not directly on a channel strip, the dry signal needs to stay all the way down, because again, this is going to be just the wet signal. So let's see what this sounds like. Again, we're just hearing the reverb signal. Let me go back to the beginning here. One thing I really love to do is to play with the sample rate, because you can half the sample rate, so it makes the reverb last twice as long and also deepens the tone of it and thickens the tone of it. I'm going to do that with this. You don't have to. If you want a brighter reverb, you can keep it with the original sample rate, but I'm going to half the sample rate for this one. The reverb here is really going to help to blur some of those artifacts that were produced when we did a bunch of time and pitch correction on her. So let's hear what this sounds like with just reverb and then the dry signal.
Just keep tearing me apart. Push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear.
One thing I am going to do is I'm going to pull down the reverb tail length just a touch.
Of the fire.
Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's reload that soft plate there. For some reason it went down to 0.
Below me.
So let's use, oh, you know, it's because it's a real impulse response, not a synthesized impulse response. Okay, well, never mind. We're not going to be able to play with that too much. Let's see. Maybe I'll just pull the volume envelope down a bit, just so the tail doesn't last so long.
Yeah, one moment I'm alone in this one.
Yeah, that's not too bad. All right, cool. So let's listen to that with the chorus, the reverb, and the dry signals in there.
This time you keep setting fire, you keep setting fire below me. Just keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear.
All right, cool. Before we listen to it with everything in there, I want to apply these same settings to our chorus over here. Now, the chorus has 2 lead vocals that are panned hard left and hard right. They're the same thing in unison. And we have a harmony as well. I'm going to pan off to the right just a little bit. Again, it's an artificially produced harmony. So I'm going to take the settings, the EQ and compression that we threw on the verse here. I'm going to copy those over to, and again, I'm just holding Option to do so. Oop, I grabbed the wrong one. You just hold Option to do so. So just hold Option and drag it over. There we go. Pull our compression from the lead channel over to our 2 lead channels. And then the backing harmony, we're going to drag over to the other backing harmony track. And then I'm also going to apply a similar amount of chorus, probably a touch more because it's the hook of the song, and then reverb. There you go. All right, so let's give this a listen. I'll start about halfway through the verse, and then we'll listen to about half of the chorus. By the way, I pulled the music down here just for a bit because the chorus vocals came in really hot, and I didn't want to kill your ears. Yeah, I had to pull down the volume and the choruses quite a bit because they're doubled up, and I pulled the harmony up quite a bit. So that's just a good starting point. Keep in mind that this is not like, as I said in the last time I did a video like this is not a definitive method to mixing vocals, this is a good starting point. This is the way I always start. I start with those waves plugins that we talked about in the other video. But if all you have is Logic plugins, this is a great way to start, and then you can go in, you can adjust things and tweak things in a way that's maybe better for your music or your song or your singer. And I also didn't cover things like adding delay and other time-based effects to the voice as well. So those are all other things to consider. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.